It's lovely to be back. I've been in the wilderness years for 6 months. I got bored of selling to people and decided I'd go and try this stuff out for real. So this is the pure, unadulterated truth. There's no sales pitch behind any of this. This is my actual, real experiences, trying to practice what I've been preaching for the last 3 or 4 years. I can't even get this display to work, let alone a live demo.
Just have to wait.
If I plug it in, it will help. There we go. So I wanted to talk to you about what I call DevOps Ground Zero. DevOps Ground Zero is my last 6 months of going from Rackspace and a service provider who, even though they maybe weren't quite AWS and Google, were still doing some fairly fancy stuff in cloud, to my current employer, Pearson. And I felt compelled to come back and share some experiences, let people know what I've been up to, but also try and highlight some patterns and anti-patterns that I've observed in a large enterprise. I'm not the most technical person in the room by any stretch of the imagination, so I'm not going to go toe-to-toe with you guys. I'm going to talk about all the things you expect, which is people, culture, and trying how to get change going. So if you find yourself in a company where you wish you could do a little bit more, hopefully you better learn a little bit from this, and hopefully you come and find me afterwards. You can tell me some of the stuff I'm about to do wrong. So a little bit about me. I'm a reformed evangelist. I used to spend a lot of time evangelizing Rackspace's cloud and its proposition. I then realized that actually the real value is in trying to share those experiences and actually try and live it. There is no stealth sales pitch. I haven't even got an I'm hiring piece at the end. It's just the facts.
But you are, right?
Who knows? Maybe. I've really gone from a technology role to a people role. So I've gone from a manager of 0 to a manager of over 110 people in just about every continent in the world, apart from Antarctica, because the internet connection is not good enough. I'm also really good at stretching children, as this image shows. I'm not as active on Twitter as I used to be, but if you do want the periodic update of how interesting the life at Pearson is, you can find me on @ChrisWiggy. So a little bit about Pearson. The origins of Pearson go through a company called Longman, which date back to 1724. Pearson was incorporated in 1844, so our company's as old as Morse code. If we put that into context, quite a lot of things have happened in the world since Pearson came into fashion. And they were a building firm in Yorkshire, building houses and bits and pieces for people who found their way randomly into publishing and now something to do with computers. This is a 40,000 global employee company across 70 countries. So if we're thinking about scale, diversity, different cultural approaches, different markets, you've got it all, right? I really didn't under-egg it when I wanted a new challenge. And there's 36,000 operating system instances deployed across a range of legacy old stuff, things that are even dusty that I don't want to touch, private clouds, public clouds, you name it. And I've got this team of 100, 110 folks looking after the majority of that. So the reality check here is I'm trying to modernize a 171-year-old company. Whose company is older than Pearson's in this room? Anyone? Who is it, please? Elsevier. Okay. You might better relate to then some of the things I've had to go through. I think the data centers might still be wood burning in some places. So going from Rackspace to Pearson, the natural question is, what have I done? Why would I go from this cushy job where you get to talk about cloud and cool shit and go and do something different? I think the better question is why. So I'm going to be really frank and really honest about some of the challenges that Pearson has. But the thing that really convinced me to go work for them in the first place was the people. When I went to interview, I wasn't really interested in the job. They managed to convince me. And they convinced me because they believed that this technology transformation they were going through was a people problem. You can sign all the checks in the world, you can make all those things happen, but if you don't get the people to come with you, you've still got a white elephant at the end. So knowing that I had some level of senior leadership air cover that said, it's not about the amount of money we give you, it's about what you can do with people, really gave me some confidence that actually there might be some substance in trying to do this kind of transformation. But like all large enterprises, I have, good and bad days. And on some days, I feel like this. But then on other days, I feel a bit more like this. And this is all part of the transformation. To pardon my French, I was advised when I joined Pearson, be aware of when you have your oh fuck moment, which is the reality of what you're trying to do hits you, and you spend about half a day or so feeling quite helpless. And you have to kind of remind yourself that it's okay, this is the stuff you're here to fix. And actually, you shouldn't treat any of those things as ingrained. They're things you have to go move out the way. So we're talking about ground zero, right? We're talking about nothing. And I mean literally nothing, which apparently now explodes. If that makes me the catalyst, fantastic, I'll take that. But how do you know in your company, if you think this sounds familiar, how do you know you're at ground zero? There's one special check that I've invented. Count the number of times people say governance. So governance is what companies implement in the absence of common sense. If you can't trust people to do the right thing, you get governance. I don't know whether shop it is that sells it, but it must be making an absolute fortune. But more realistically, if you go into kind of anti-patterns for large enterprises, these are sentences that will ring true. Every release or change to infrastructure is a step into the unknown. It's this brave new world fueled by pizza and beer that you think you might get through. There's a lot of monitoring systems, but there's not a lot of monitoring going on. The main thrust of my job on some days is to feel like I'm slowing things down, controlling it, and protecting it. If you've read the DevOps guy's blog on fragility versus anti-fragility, you'll know that's the wrong thing. I'm often the police for people that won't submit change requests, because if it's not in the ITIL textbook, we're not doing it right now. And genuinely, if you've read the Phoenix Project, you'll know this, right? I could probably find replace Parts Unlimited with Pearson, and it would be my life on most days. It's good then that I've got this textbook to guide me through how to go make some of those changes. So none of this has really helped me to convey to you that I'm quite excited about this challenge. You might think I'm a bit of a masochist. But my thought here is that someone's got to make a start. So I'm a bit ambitious, and if I think there's some credit going around, I'd rather be one of the folks that helped to start it, rather than the person that came in and just iced the cake and make it look pretty. So for me, this is a big empty canvas. There's no one telling me what I can or can't do. So my job for the first 6 months is to work out how to go find some terra firma and how to go start the ball rolling. So here's some tips. In every single company, without question, there is someone trying to change. If you're that person as well, find your buddy, because they do exist, and go find a common enemy. So Rackspace's CEO, Taylor Rhodes, talked to me about the concept of a common enemy. If you're trying to rally the troops behind something which you need them to get behind, find a common enemy. Mostly in IT, it's work, right? Not because we're kind of work shy and don't want to do stuff, but we've got too much work. A lot of it is unscheduled, it's unplanned. Enemy is work that you can't control. Also, contentious, in every single company, I'm an absolute believer that there's a leader somewhere looking to disrupt the status quo. They might have some ulterior motives like world domination, but fundamentally there's someone looking to go disrupt. Find them and embolden them with your technology ideas. Make them more confident to go drive change. Developers, I spent a little bit of time doing this at Rackspace. I'm trying to understand a developer. It took me a long time. They're pretty consistent people. Find a way to increase your relevance to them by getting your hands dirty. I use this analogy inside Pearson to try to communicate this idea. And I said, well, look, think about OpenStack. Think about this huge open source community. In that community, do you want to be VMware or Red Hat? And they didn't really understand. I said, well, look, VMware pay the same money as Red Hat to go get involved in OpenStack. But when you rock up to the events and you go to the Hangouts and you talk about the technical stuff, who's there from VMware saying, hey, I've got this great idea to lead people forward? No one. Everyone rocks up to VMware's party, drinks their beer, and then fucks off again. What we're trying to do here is be the Red Hat, which is, for all their flaws, they're there, hands on keyboards, writing code with everybody else, trying to get stuff done. And people relate to that. That's a really good way to go build some bridges with people that have previously dismissed you as talkers and visionaries with really no relevance to their goals tomorrow. I've also learned to do the opposite to what my business does currently. So right now, if I want to go get a project, I'll think about this massive number that ends in 6 or 7 zeros, and I'll go and try and get people excited about it. And we'll spend 6 months talking about it, about why it's a good idea and when it's a bad idea. And then we'll probably do a bit of a spending review. And maybe in 12 months, when the idea should have been completed, I might get some money, at which point then I've got to do something else. I've decided to try and start small, stay lean, and build only to the limit of what is currently required, which is kind of getting around to now what I'm trying to do inside Pearson to drive modernisation of a 171-year-old company. I'm going to eat the elephant, bite size, one step at a time. I've got a different customer engagement plan. There's far too many stories of central IT buying a private cloud, then walking around to all the application groups and beating them with the private cloud stick, when they're quite happy in Amazon or in Rackspace doing something else. We have to engage developers on hard problems, right? Developers don't want help with easy stuff. They're smart, they can do those things. They want help with hard problems. So you've got to go find people in your business that can help you solve the hard problems. And if you haven't got them, get them. The VP from Disney who spoke at the OpenStack event kind of put it best, right? When he asked what he wanted from IT, if it was a pizza, it's a faster lover's pizza with extra fast. We've got to go match the speed of the business, which is everything tomorrow, if not yesterday. And we're trying to do that, and I'm trying to do this without saying the word DevOps, embedded SREs, site reliability engineers, working in teams with developers, propping up a lot of the infrastructure stuff so the dev guys can get on with doing what they need to do, but they're working on a common pipeline, they're sharing experiences, they're learning a bit about what it takes to do the other's job without necessarily being told what DevOps is about doing that job. So no DevOps teams. There are lots and lots of DevOps teams in Pearson. I wouldn't hire any of those folks to do ops for me. That kind of tells you all you need to know. So what are we going to measure with this project? We're going to talk about performance. I've lifted all of this from Puppet Labs' State of DevOps report. So we're going to go build something. I don't really know what it is yet because it's lean. And we're going to measure time to deploy, and deployment frequency, and mean time to recover. I want to show that we can burst every day. It sounds simple to probably a lot of you guys. It's not as easy as it looks when you've got applications you've got to bring towards that world. So I'm looking at my delta between at-rest and peak spend on a daily basis. And looking at how dense I can be as well, not physically and mentally dense, actually in terms of compute, because I've already got that one squared away. And we're doing a lot around monitoring to make sure that we're not moving from self-service, which is I have automated a task, to proper automation, which is monitoring tells me that task should happen, and no one gets involved soup to nuts. From a technology perspective, I keep telling my team we're a startup inside an enterprise. Right? We've been blessed with a little bit of seed money, and we can keep going until we spent it all. And if we can't get any more, we're done. Right? End of the startup. Go get a real job. Our trick is to keep the funding coming by showing growth. So we'll carry as little baggage as possible from our parent company, apart from the stuff that we know works. So we've not really got any rules. We can go get the things that we need. We're trying to build for containers. Right? If we start to build for cloud now, we've kind of missed the cloud bus, right? That was a couple of years ago. We need to get ahead of demand. So we need to be in the container space. We need to be thinking about frameworks for microservices at scale where developers can concentrate on still writing their little bits of code, but a lot of that plumbing is abstracted away and just works for them. Shared services for that. And we've got to build patterns, right? We're the first people that are going to go and try and do proper microservices with proper embedded ops. And the whole of Pearson is looking at us to go work out, well, when you've found out how to do it, could you come tell us? Because we fancy doing the same. So this is when stuff like enterprise architecture sounds terrifying, but it's actually your vehicle to go spread that message to a whole bunch of people who need it. You enable those people whose job it is to go into all those different places. They'll take the message you give them. And I'm looking forward to the day where I can sit in our boardroom, flip my laptop around, push it to the CIO and say, oh, you deploy it. Right? That's the acid test for me. If I can't do that, we're nowhere. So, quick summary and some tips. Don't wait for somebody else to start this. If you don't think your company's moving, everyone might be waiting for you to start. They might be looking at you instead. Don't get carried away with scope. I've spent a lifetime building cathedrals, but it will get you nowhere unless you can work out how to make sandstone first. Engage your toughest partners early. One of my first partners in this bite-sized project is our security team. I found a guy who actually understands Agile, and he's willing to go, don't laugh, it's true. It's not just reading from the Phoenix project. This guy actually got it, and he was telling me stuff about Agile. And they're willing to go put an embedded engineer into our sprints and build the things we need so it's compliant as we go. And build an open community. I look at Target as the inspiration for this. So if you look at how Target told their DevOps story, they start with a couple of guys that built a big community inside their grassroots engineering business about how to go do this stuff. I'm trying to build a Me Too culture. So rather than the big IT stick, people come to me and say, hey, I hear what you're doing is pretty cool. How do I get involved? And that's the first step then towards us being able to help them to run those applications in production at scale. So my advice for others, just take the plunge. You might end up an absolute legend. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
You said no DevOps teams. Why?
Why?
In a room full of DevOps people.
So I think that I'm a bit of a purist when it comes to stuff like that. I understand that the massive marketing and hype is probably going to run roughshod over my beliefs, but I think if you've got a team doing DevOps, it's kind of missing the point, right? The idea is you get good dev people and good ops people working together. You don't have to call it a DevOps team unless you're all really just hungry for a promotion and a pay rise. For me, this is about just doing things naturally. If you've got a DevOps team in there who are separate from your Dev and Ops team, that's a warning sign. That's 3 silos rather than 2. So for me, I would say, well, ignore the concept of a DevOps team unless the job of the DevOps team is to go in there, build some bridges, and then dissolve after a predetermined period of time. If you can't remove your DevOps team, then DevOps isn't working. You can disagree?
Yeah, oh, yes. And I think quite a few people in this room might. I think what differentiates DevOps from the past is CI/CD. You can't walk away and leave stuff anymore. Immutable infrastructure, continuous deployment, continuous delivery mandates the necessity of a cross-cutting, cross-cultural role, which I understand to be DevOps, which is not devs on their own, not ops on their own, but bringing it all together in a continuous process. Discuss, please.
None of those words you used include the word team. A team is not necessary for those things to be possible.
Oh, why?
Because you've already got 2 teams, just get them to work together like that.
What happened to bringing people together? And DevOps is as much about communication and culture as it is about the underlying enabling tech.
I get it. A team is an organisational structure. It doesn't determine how work happens. Collaboration determines how work happens. So if you need to put a team around those 2 groups to make them work together, what I'm telling you is your collaboration is not working.
I don't understand this didactic, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'm happy to kind of discuss it over a beer, but we're talking about kind of artificial structures to try and drive organic relationships.
Then let me ask you a different question, which is to what extent do you think what you're doing is portable outside your 170-year-old company?
Well, then you've asked the age-old question, which is there a repeatable pattern for DevOps? I think it's pretty personal to an individual organisation. They've got different desires, they've got different needs. There's a set of principles and some ideas around maybe best practice at best. Is there a lift and shift model? No, if I was going to go to a different company tomorrow, I'd take a grassroots approach to DevOps again, and I'd build it based on the same belief systems that suited that company.
And possibly come to different conclusions.
Quite possibly, quite possibly.
Sorry, can I point out people at the back probably can't hear half of that conversation?
I'm being challenged on the requirement for a DevOps team.
Stop. Take it offline, please.
Last question. Anyone, any last questions?
Before the fight.
I'm looking forward to my beer now. Someone please ask a question, please.
Okay, thank you very much again.
Thank you.